The fool has a long path to tread in his spiritual journey. He may not yet even be aware that he is embarked on such a journey. To assist him, he encounters the magician, card number 1 of the major arcana. The magician is something of an adept, a semi-wise man blessed with a degree of understanding, and therefore of benefit to the fool in his quest. The magician is confident, exceedingly so, believing that his wishes are those of God. He thinks he is the conscious link between the creative will of man and God, and he will appear at the appropriate hour, when the fool has most need of him. The magician brandishing a wand is Abraham Van Helsing, the scientist turned magician, armed with his faith in the practices of folklore and witchcraft. Only with Van Helsing's intellectual support can Harker proceed with his quest. Later, the fool will encounter the Empress. This card is a blueprint for Mina. The Empress is the matronly mother goddess, descendant of other earth goddesses, such as Demeter. She presents a symbol of universal fertility, which can be construed as a further reminder of the multi-fatherhood of Mina's son. The Empress is suggested of one about to become a mother in the way that Mina restores life in Dracula. The powers of the Empress are passive, stereotypically feminine. She has not the active intellect of the magician. She represents intuitive feeling and a highly developed sense of values. She is warm, helpful, and stable, gifted in handling people, as Mina is with Renfield. Further along his questing path, the fool must make the decision of the lovers. In some versions, this card depicts a young man alongside 2 women, one young and fair, the other older and dark. Possibly he must choose between the good and the evil woman. Possibly, too, he is making the decision between remaining at home with his mother or departing with his beloved. The classic Oedipal dilemma. It is the moment when the bird flees the nest, leaving comfort and security behind for the excitement of the unknown. His female companion, Mina, will provide dedication and support for the fool, Harker. In fact, there are many lovers in Dracula, and the card is able to refer to both the earthly love, which centers around Lucy and Mina and their assorted menfolk, and also the more spiritual love, Agape, which binds the whole group together by transcending sexuality. The card also posits a reversal of the pleasurable side of love, hinting at Adam and Eve and the evil which visited them in the Garden of Eden. This might be applied to the anguish of Lucy and Arthur, parted irrevocably from one another. The next relevant card is number 9. From Stoker's working notes, it is known that Van Helsing was created as a composite figure, combining the qualities of scientist, philosopher, and detective. Appropriately, a further card from the tarot can be applied to the Dutch professor alongside the magician. The hermit is as solitary and austere as Van Helsing. He is the ancient looking down from on high, following the flame that burns within him, along the road that leads he knows not where. He seeks the answers to the questions that plague him, and, like the professor, feels driven by a high duty, even more reminiscent of Van Helsing. The hermit's negative side is reflected in stubborn dogmatism. Neither of them is able to conceive of answers outside the existing framework of their thoughts. This sums up Van Helsing's magician, hermit, and bigot. Thornburg has this to say about the card that follows. The Wheel of Fortune is significant for Dracula, and for the Gothic generally, in that this card shows the universal balance of things demonic and apocalyptic, diabolical and divine. The card depicts conflicting images, including the beast from Revelation, highlighting the cycles and rhythms of life and death, growth and decay. The Wheel of Fortune continues a major turning point in the ritual of the tarot. Ahead of the Fool, Harker lie paths of darkness, the complete unknown, yet he must follow these if he wishes to unearth the truth. The card corresponds with a signal turning point in Dracula. When Van Helsing assures Harker he was not the victim of a nightmare or insanity, his mind is sound and strong, Harker now joins forces hunting for Dracula. The Hanged Man is one of the most mysterious of the major arcana cards, for the victim, hanging by one foot, not the neck, wears an expression of detachment rather than suffering, as if indicative of a spiritual contemplation. Thornburg identifies this with the mental torpor that descends upon Harker after his Transylvanian escape. On another reading, the Hanged Man can be taken as symbolic of bodily death, as a prelude to the birth of the true self, the essential prerequisite of the Gnostic quest. The Hanged Man might also be engaged in an act of personal sacrifice, thereby paving the way to rebirth and immortality of the spirit. This is a function performed by Quincy Morris. Faced with the card of death, the Count's pursuers each come to a new understanding of its force and meaning. The tarot interpretation of death, moreover, is sometimes seen not as a pronouncement of termination, but of transformation, the passage from one level of existence to another, which lifts the dead into a new life. Death, in other words, is at one and the same time a process of destruction and creation, which is exactly how Dracula sees it. Some versions of the card, furthermore, reveal a skeleton behind which is the setting sun, the exact moment of Dracula's expiry. The previous chapter speculated upon the relationship between Dracula and the devil. According to the tarot, the devil is portrayed as the purveyor of lust, pride, and ambition, the possessor of unbridled passions and seeker of mastery over earthly things. He is a symbol of misused power, as savage as nature, a fountain of temptation, and the personification of evil. Visually, aside from having bat wings, some versions include hairs on the palms of his hands, and he bears marks upon his flesh, including an inverted pentagram on his forehead. The similarity to Stoker's scarred count is striking. Further, the devil depicts a man and a woman, apparently chained one on each side of him. In Dracula, they are represented by Renfield and Lucy Westenra, Satan's assistants until such time as their release. It is the function of the card to remind the fool that he must ultimately do battle with the devil. If he wins, he will enjoy a special relationship with God. The concluding 5 cards of the major arcana all deserve brief comment. The star is illustrative of all that is potentially good, the expectancy of a happy future for the encounter with the devil. A young girl is shown on her knees pouring water from urns held in each hand. She is Mother Nature, refurnishing the fountain of life. This situation is totally reversed in Dracula, for Harker has not brought life to the barren land of Transylvania. Instead, he has set free the powers of darkness that seek to despoil his native England. The moon has obvious inferences in Renfield's lunacy, for his moods come and go with the change from moonrise to sunrise, so that Seward comes to suspect their influence on him. Dracula, too, reverses the mythical solar god. It is darkness which lends him strength, and it is the moon which symbolizes his evil. One version of the card has what looks like a werewolf howling up at the moon, a graphic reminder of the primitive unconscious fears associated with moonlight. Next comes the sun, characterized according to some traditions by a naked child riding a white horse bareback under a warm sun. This is the child of enlightenment. He is rid of the trappings of conventional thought and identifies with the single life process of the universe. The child is man. The man is a child, innocent and reaching out, confident and joyous. He is the reward for earthly love and the symbol of life's renewal. The child is the infant Harker. Other versions of the card show two people in an enclosing ring, like the magic circle within which Van Helsing and Mina shelter as they approach Castle Dracula. One version of the Day of Judgment shows several coffins floating on water, from which a man, a woman, and a divine child are shown rising up with their arms outstretched. Above them is an image of an archangel and his summoning trumpet. This card is associated with renewal, death followed by resurrection. Thornburg takes this to reflect the destruction of the undead and the expression of peace which comes over them at that moment. The final card of the major arcana is that of the world, which symbolizes the culmination of the fool's quest. It denotes release and fulfillment, the ultimate attainment of knowledge and understanding. The Harker who strides the land following his destruction of Dracula is a very different Harker to the one who began his travel journal on his fateful expedition 6 months previously. The card portrays a youthful figure within a circular wreath, the symbol of ultimate victory. The figure is androgynous, a veil draped across his or her groin. Its sex is immaterial. Itself is unity, a symbol of psychic wholeness. In this respect, many exponents of the tarot prefer to interpret the major arcana not as a sequence but as a circle. The Fool appears not only at the start but also at the end, which is another beginning. This time it is young Harker Jr. who will one day embark upon the quest for truth. This has necessarily been a cursory excursion through the symbolism of the tarot. Yet what is apparent even from this brief reading is that in Dracula the ritualistic quest is reversed. It is diabolical rather than divine. The summons which sends Harker off on the journey to open Pandora's box is issued by the devil, not by God. But as Thornburg notes, although Harker ceased to refuse the diabolical call, the effect upon his psyche is virtually that which is visited upon those who refuse the divine call. Harker's mind begins to disintegrate once he has released evil into the world, and the novel follows the gradual stages of its reintegration. From the perspective of the tarot, in other words, the focus of Dracula lies less with the malevolent count than with the fool's quest, that of a young solicitor unknowingly sent out on an archetypal spiritual journey. A second and even more evident source for the quest motive in Dracula derives from quintessentially British origins. Victorian literature was intoxicated by the great romantic myths, none more so than the quest of the Arthurian knights for the Holy Grail. What started out as simply a legend of military gallantry at a time when post-Roman Britain found a mythical warrior saviour to fend off the Saxon hordes, became endowed over the centuries with ever more complex embellishments, as writers and poets contributed to this skeletal story. Jousting, chivalrous knights, the Round Table, courtly romance, and the search for the Holy Grail.